12 ways and frameworks to improve your self-discipline. Ultimately, self-discipline is a completely internal game. Nobody can force you to become better. You truly have to do the inner work to become better yourself. But there's a vast gulf between wanting something and then actually doing it. What I found to work really well is to think in incrementalist terms. It's not going to be one huge big bang, then suddenly now you're a very self-disciplined person. No, it's a gradual improvement. Just like you're going to the gym. If you're overweight, you start going to the gym. You're not going to become super jacked within the first week. It's a gradual process. In the same way, you are developing the self-discipline muscle. So think incrementally. And the incrementalism comes from different frameworks, different ideas that come into your head as you're about to be non-disciplined. So it's really useful to know all of these ideas and hacks so that it's almost like a vocabulary in a new language. When you know what to say in a given moment, you'll be better equipped to react to life's unforeseen circumstances. So these are 12 ways and frameworks that have helped me to dramatically increase and improve my self-discipline over the last few years. And if only one of them does it for you, I will have achieved the purpose of this video. So let's go. Number one is take good care of yourself. And this is not me flying the flag of self-care, which I really dislike as a term, because it's very often used as an excuse for mediocrity. I'm talking about very practical things that will keep your machine running better. Sleep is first and foremost. If you don't sleep well, you will not perform well. No matter how disciplined you are as a person, after a protracted period of sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night, you will simply not summon the muscle to be able to be disciplined. And then, of course, a modicum of healthy eating and exercise, all of that. And of course, in the early stages of your business, you will have to accept sleeping less, right? There's just really no way around it. When you have a full-time job, for example, you want to start a consulting business on the side, there will be a period of you having to put in 60, 80-hour weeks for many months at a time. It might happen that it won't be necessary for you, but the vast majority of people who need to do this need to go through this trial by fire period where you work a lot. And during that time, if you sleep very little, you will be facing with the biggest challenge for discipline. Like everything else that I'm going to be saying here are just marginal improvements, but sleep is the one big piece of leverage. If you sleep a reasonable amount, even if it's like 6 to 7 hours during the week, and on the weekend you catch up with one 10-hour session. If you don't maintain this basic level of sleep, you'll be very bad off, and everything else that I'm going to be saying will not be useful. So fix that first. Yes, healthy diet and exercise are of course also important, but I found, at least for myself, that sleep is a far bigger lever than these two. Point two, imagine you have a boss, and that boss is your future millionaire self. Imagine like today you are looking back at your foolish younger self and you're judging that young man or young woman. All of these mistakes, all of these false starts, you just sort of look down on them a little bit, and that's good, right? You should be judging yourself how you were 10, 15, 20 years ago. But in the same way, if you project yourself to your future millionaire state, you should be judging yourself what you're doing now. All the ineffectiveness, the procrastination, the lack of skills. It doesn't mean judging that you have to like look down on yourself and say, oh, what a bad person you are. No, you can do it lovingly, but just like a parent guiding a child, you just know that you're nowhere near the level where you have to be. And so always think like your future boss would think of yourself. Project yourself forward. Imagine yourself a little bit grayer, a little bit older, and talking to yourself the way you are now and telling yourself how the way how you currently work is just not very effective. Framework number 3, Alex Hormozi's ignorance tax. This is a really powerful concept. If you're currently making 100 grand a year, what is your biggest cost item? It's not your taxes, it's not your rent, it's not your car. It is actually your ignorance, because you're paying yearly 900,000 in ignorance tax because you don't know how to get to $1 million a year. And I'm still paying this ignorance tax myself. I'm on 400, 500 grand a year now. I'm paying 500, 600 grand in ignorance tax. And so every time I'm about to procrastinate, or I'm about to eat badly, or I'm about to cut down on some sleep, I always tell myself, the more you can do these things, the faster you will pay off this piece of ignorance tax. Number 4, resistance. This is a very powerful concept from the book, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He was writing about how he was a struggling writer and how he had this invisible force that kept him from writing. Always procrastinating, even while he was sitting down at the desk to write. He just had this force that he couldn't get past. And he calls it resistance. It's like an impersonal force whose only purpose is to distract people from doing great things. You can, if you're religious, you can even call it the devil, Satan, whatever it is, the enemy. But it is really like an invisible force that every time you're about to procrastinate, you have this cartoon angel and devil on your shoulders, and every time you procrastinate or do something that you shouldn't be doing, the devil has won. The devil has scored a little victory over you. And the great benefit of this framework is that you can externalize the bad behavior. You can see the force that is keeping you from doing it as something outside of yourself and can therefore better fight it. If you are kind of down on yourself once you've engaged in a bout of procrastination and you don't work as effectively and you don't write down all your lessons learned, then that's a negative thing. You should not be necessarily too down on yourself. I'm a big fan of occasionally beating yourself up over something, but it shouldn't be too much. It should be a spice, not the main dish. And if you externalize the force that is keeping you from doing the work and you are sort of seeing yourself as engaged in a battle between good and evil, and you're the good and the resistance or the devil is the evil, in that case, you have a much better chance of fighting it because it's not you. You're not fighting your nature. You're not fighting your lower self. You're just fighting an external force that is trying to drag you down. You're like a neutral player that is trying to level up, and there's a negative force that's keeping you down. It's not you, but it's something else. Number 5, sacrifice well. And this is in keeping with the religious theme of the previous topic. And I've been recently quite captivated by the story of Cain and Abel. And the reason why God does not accept Cain's sacrifice is not immediately clear from the biblical text. But it becomes clear when God scolds Cain for, "Why is your countenance fallen? Surely if you do great work, you will be rewarded." That suggests that Cain was doing his work in a sullen, bad mood. He was just going through the motions. His heart was not really in it. And so, for example, when you do conversational prospecting, when you start DM conversations with prospective clients, you could do this in a sullen, dreary mood. You could be thinking, "Oh my God, now I have to start doing this again, and what a drag it is. Oh, again, this person didn't want to talk to me." But if you do it in a cheery attitude, if you say, "Hey, maybe this person will be my next client," and every single time approaching every single new person with a completely blank slate and optimistic and positive demeanor, you will be rewarded much more than when you still do 100 conversation starts every day, or however many you have set for yourself, but you do it in a downtrodden mood. So this is the difference. Sacrifice well, sacrifice like Abel, not like Cain, and you will be rewarded. And this is a very useful framework for when you are at least formally disciplined, when you are going through the motions, but your heart is not in it. All right, quick interruption here before we get to the next point. If you like this video, please do the deed and give it a like and leave a comment if there's anything that I've forgotten, any framework that has worked really well for you. Put it in the comments so that other people, your friends, can discover this content and also benefit from it. All right, let's keep going with the list. Framework or idea number 6, everything rises at the same time. What I mean by that is that there are, of course, 3 main areas in our life that we want to constantly improve: health, wealth, and relationships. And of course, it's okay that there are seasons where you are slightly prioritizing one above the other. But I do believe that every single time there is a minimum threshold that needs to be met for all of these things. You have to maintain a certain level of health, wealth, and relationships. If your relationships go completely down the gutter and you are doing well in your wealth building, it's not ideal and it will come back to bite you. So a modicum of like a minimum level, maintain them at all times, is really important. That even means that if you have to choose between working 16-hour days and working 15-hour days and spending that 1 extra hour on your family, on extended friends who you've had, do the latter. Don't cut out people from your life. Don't neglect your health. Don't take shortcuts with eating fast food only because you think you have to hustle. That modicum of minimum maintenance of the other 2 areas in your life will come in very handy and you will need it. Otherwise, you'll pay too big a price. So everything has to rise at the same time. Sometimes it's okay to just maintain the other 2 levels, but don't go overboard. Number 7 is the new floor. So let's say that through a certain level of self-discipline, you have achieved a certain level of income. Let's say that is 10K a month. Now, what if you assume that this is a disgustingly low level to be at, that you are actually a person who deserves to be paid at 100K a month? You just simply have not unlocked that. But you are like that billionaire who got everything taken from him and who was now dropped into a new city, and who, as we all know, if you to do that to a self-made billionaire, you drop him into a new city without any money, he'll be back to being a millionaire in 5 years. That's the kind of attitude to adopt. That your current level is simply, you are on your way to getting to a point where you actually belong. Let's say that is 100,000. And that you are simply just working your way back up again. That idea that working yourself back up again is the thing to keep in mind, right? Thinking that when you're at 10K, that is just nothing. You're just purely on your way, and the, let's say, 100K a month is the new floor, that you consider 100K a month like the basic minimum standard that you have to achieve. You're simply not there yet because you're still working your way back up. And a big caveat here, it is important to not put any specific kind of monthly income on a pedestal. It's like this, oh my God, 100,000 a month. How great would that be? And I'm not there yet, and I'm not putting it on a pedestal. I'm thinking, yeah, that's kind of a level of income that I deserve, at least, but it's not something that I'm putting on a pedestal. Framework number 8, shift from output to input goals. It's one thing to want to reach a certain level of monthly income, but the other thing, and that I think is much more powerful, is you think, well, in order to make this income, how much do I believe that I need to make in terms of input? For example, how many new messages, how many DMs do I have to send in order to make a specific amount of money? Or for example, how many new videos do I need to upload, or how many pieces of content do I have to publish so that I hit that at some point? I believe that shifting from output to input goals is extremely important because you are focusing on something that you can 100% control. That's why it's not a good idea to set income goals for a specific amount of time. You just want to kind of keep that in mind and think, hey, if you're not rising fast enough, maybe you're not putting in the right kind of work. But ultimately, the main focus needs to be on the input goals, the stuff you can control. And if you're playing the organic client acquisition game, it simply means you have to publish content and you have to reach out to people. These two main things. And if you're running ads, then it means new angles, 5, 10 new angles every day or every week. And that is your input goal. Number 9, do not get an accountability partner. And I know this is super counterintuitive and even contradictory to what I used to say in the past, because I used to very much advocate for an accountability partner, saying that my wife is my former accountability partner. This is actually true. We met in a business community and we were accountability partners before there were any romantic feelings. And generally, I'm quite positive on the idea, but now I realize that it is a crutch. And quite a dangerous crutch as well, because you are externalizing your source of discipline. If you expect that somebody else will hold you accountable, you are developing your muscle less fast. And I caught myself doing this recently with my wife again when I asked her to help me with being more disciplined with food. Good example here, yesterday I got my wife some spare ribs and potato wedges. She was feeling a little bit unwell and she wanted some comfort food, so I got her that. And then as she was eating it, I couldn't resist and I had some of it myself, although at the time, I had already my full calorie count for the day. I was not supposed to eat anything anymore that day. And of course, I live to regret it. And later on in the evening, I asked her to, hey, could you help me with my self-discipline? Could you have forbidden me to eat that? And now later on, I realized that was a bad idea. I'm externalizing my source of self-discipline. I'm not keeping it inside. I am asking somebody else to help me with it. And of course, we always want all the help that we can get, but the more you do this, the more you externalize, the less fast you will develop that internal source of strength. So I recommend that you don't get an accountability partner and instead focus on all of these ideas, and maybe you'll find many more. I'm sure there's many more, but develop that source of discipline from the inside. Number 10 is remove temptations from your environment. Whether that's using a browser blocker like Freedom.to, which I very much recommend, or not having any bad food in the pantry. It's important that you remove all the crap that could actually lead you astray. And I know it sounds a little bit contradictory with what I said just now about not having an accountability partner, because you are using an external source, an external tool to help you with your discipline. But I do think there is a difference, because you are not putting the onus on other people. You are simply using tools. Just like you use a bicycle to get somewhere faster than if you were just walking, it's merely a tool to make you more productive. And I believe that there's a qualitative difference between using a tool and asking another human to help you be disciplined. Number 11, quantify and play a game with yourself. As I mentioned, I use calorie counting to become lean and lose weight. And I have a spreadsheet for this with a big database of food items. And so every time I eat something, I just put it into the spreadsheet so that I know that I'm eating enough protein and that I'm not going over a certain amount of daily calories. This helps me a lot with developing discipline in the food area, because every time I go over, I know, okay, today you've had a day like yesterday where I went over my calorie count, and that day lives in infamy. in my short-term memory. I know that yesterday, Sunday, I went over my calorie count. And I know it's like a little bit of a dark spot in my past. And I love the idea of having a streak of whatever that would be, bright spots in my recent past. So my goal is to keep an uninterrupted streak of good days, to not succumb to the temptation. Try to do the same thing if you quantify and play a game with yourself. Maybe you're struggling with focus, then have a Pomodoro timer or anything else and just count the uninterrupted streaks of work that you were able to achieve where you were not distracted. And finally, number 12, assume an ever greater level of responsibility. There's a risk that if you're in the game only for the sake of your immediate family, that you will get comfortable pretty soon. Right now, I'm making way more money than I need to just provide for my family. But the reason why I'm able to be still very dissatisfied with where I'm at and still wanting to do much more is because I'm assuming much greater responsibility. I have goals that I'm not going to be sharing. They're a little bit personal, but the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing has a little bit of a, let's say, let's call it charitable or missionary zeal that I have, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to, virtue signal in any way. But there is a bigger purpose in what I do. It's not just for my immediate family. Because if I didn't have that, I would start to become comfortable now. And I don't want that. Because let's say you've achieved a net worth of $3 million. What would be your motivation to get to 10, to get to 30, to get to 100 if you don't have a greater goal? If you don't want to build a hospital or build an architectonical marvel of the modern world, right? If you didn't have this kind of bigger, greater goal that transcends you, you would stop trying. You would get comfortable. This last framework is about think big. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to be remembered for a couple of generations? Ultimately, we're all going to get forgotten. But what do you want to be remembered for in the short run? And if you don't know, then develop some fantasy. I mean, there is still a lot of suffering in the world. Just even if it were saving children from war-torn countries, there's a lot of work to be done. And you, by not willing to engage in this, is this really the best use of your time that you're wondering, oh, I don't really care about this, or you don't care about it enough to do something? Like, give yourself the goal of saving 100 children from war-torn countries or from situations of abuse. I mean, isn't that worth your effort? Because once you know that, once you make this your mission, you will look completely differently at yourself when you are procrastinating, when you are not being self-disciplined. Every time you're slacking off, you are not doing the work that you're meant to be doing. You are literally prioritizing your momentary comfort that is not even going to feel good after a couple of minutes over someone's life who you could help save. Of course, we all know the very powerful scene at the end of Schindler's List where Oskar Schindler realizes that he could have done more. He wasted so much money. He could have made more money to save more people. And so you don't want to be in this kind of situation where you realize at the end of a life's chapter or at the end of your life that you could have done more. Imagine you, towards the end of your life, you save one person and then you realize, oh my God, if I had put in more work, I could have saved more than one person. It's a terrible place to be. All right, those were the 12 frameworks to help you with self-discipline. If there's any one more, please add it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, and especially your comment will help other people to discover this video. And so I'd be very grateful if you did that. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you next time.